afternoon. The time is 4:02 p.m. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Public Safety Committee. I'm your chair, Dan Syme. My co-chair, Councilwoman Hawkins, has had a family emergency, won't be here. We have an excused absence from Barbara Shanklin. In committee, we have committee member Shamika Parrish-Wright, Ken Herndon, Jonathan Joseph, Anthony Piagentini, Jenny Mulvey-Warridge, Betsy Rui, and also in is Councilman Owen and Councilwoman Purvis. Clerk, will you please read the virtual meeting language?
This meeting is being held pursuant to KRS 61.826 and Council Rule 5A, read in full.
And if Councilwoman Hawkins shares her video, she's actually here.
Okay, we do have Councilwoman Hawkins in video. If you would share it, please. We have 4 pieces of legislation on the agenda today. Please note that item number 2, R-112-25, will be held at the request of the sponsor. Clerk, please read item number 1 into the record.
Item 1, a resolution of the Legislative Council of Louisville, Jefferson County Metro Government, Louisville Metro Council, urging Governor Andy Beshear and the Kentucky Department of Juvenile Justice to expedite the reopening of the juvenile detention facility in Louisville, Kentucky, read in full.
It's been properly moved. Councilman Kevin Bratcher is the sponsor of this resolution. As Kevin's not here, we have JJ will be speaking on this measure. Councilman Joseph, you have the floor.
Yeah, this resolution is designed to, obviously, as the title says, to urge Governor Beshear and state government to move at a quicker pace to open up the juvenile justice system here in Louisville. We know that the funding has been there through the Kentucky General Assembly, over $30 million to open up the facility. This has been sponsored by myself, Councilman Bratcher, and Councilwoman Hawkins. And so we have from both sides of the Metro Council political aisle, but we just believe that it needs to be opened and needs to be opened at a faster pace than where it's at right now. And so I'm happy to take any kind of questions or any thoughts.
In queue is Anthony Piagentini, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, just want to thank my colleagues for bringing this up. By way of background, because I was here when we had to make the decision that originally triggered this whole thing, and then it was myself, David James, and then at the time, former Councilwoman and now Judge Jessica Green, that went to the State General Assembly in a bipartisan manner to advocate for them to reopen this and to operate it out of their budget, as they do with the other juvenile justice facilities. So we're happy to say that this effort has always had bipartisan support and agreement in order for us to really positively affect change in our juvenile crime rate. I also want to highlight that we're usually not, I know I personally am usually not a huge fan of doing resolutions. A letter would suffice, frankly, but in this particular case, it is directly impacting an operation of government that would directly impact Jefferson County government as well, metro government, as well as our citizens. So again, usually I'm a little skeptical of the utility of resolutions. In this case, I think it's well done. And finally, I just want to thank Representative Jared Bauman. He has already, in a hearing, asked directly of the Department of Juvenile Justice to present options to speed up and what the budget implications would be to speed up the construction of juvenile justice centers. So this is just hopefully vocalizing our unanimous support for that effort and to make this happen as quickly as possible. I really appreciate old habits die hard. Now Councilman Bratcher, as well as Councilman Joseph and Councilwoman Hawkins in sponsoring this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Next is Councilman Ken Herndon, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to speak in favor of this. Councilman Bratcher has multiple times spoken eloquently about the fact that our troubled youth do not need to be sitting in Adair County, away from their families and support system. We help these folks not just by arrest and incarceration, but by other means, which I support as well. But this does have to be part of it, and I support that, and I would like to be added as a co-sponsor, please.
Thank you, Councilman. Any more people in the queue? Councilman Joseph?
Yeah, one more thing that I think it'd be worth just having on record for this as well, because with option-wise, we're kind of in a spot where either the youth is released in regards to these high crimes, or they're sent to Adair County a couple hours away. But we, as a council, received an email from the Department of Youth Transitional Services that stated that 204, this was for the second quarter of 2025, 204 youth were transported 39,349 miles in a matter of a 3-month span. And those numbers are also quite large, and I don't think it's something that that we've really discussed or that's been put out there a lot, but I think it's worth noting too that when we're looking at that as well, I know that mileage on a road is the least necessarily concern, but I think it's something also worth adding when it comes to nothing locally having for options.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Hawkins is in the queue. Councilwoman Purvis.
Yes, sir. I wanted to be added as a sponsor as well. Thank you.
No one else? Okay. I'm sorry. Councilwoman Parrish Wright, please.
Oh, sorry, I didn't have the mic on. Thank you for recognizing me. I just want to go on record, just recognizing the transportation issue, the burden that it has been on our local department. I definitely had concerns when it was first closed down, and so I understand that council made that decision. So I just want to reiterate that this is about the purpose of public safety, as we agree, rehabilitation and treatment, as Councilman Herndon referred to, deterrence of future crime, and just making sure that we know that these are short-term ways to deal with long-standing issues and root causes. So I just wanted to be on record saying that, but I'm not in disagreement that something needs to happen soon, and I appreciate my council members moving for that. But don't want to forget the restorative practice and restorative justice programs that also need support, because some of us were troubled youth, speaking for myself, and just understanding that it should be restorative for those youth as well. So I hope that whatever comes in place has those different components for education, connections to vocational training, dealing with substance and trauma-informed care, because you can build it, but if it doesn't provide those things, then we will see a lot more recidivism, and I know a lot of us don't want to see that with our young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Anyone else? I don't see any more in the queue. No more additional questions. Hearing none, this resolution requires a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. This resolution passes and will be placed on the consent calendar for the next meeting. Clerk, please read item number 3 in the record.
An ordinance amending Louisville Metro Code of Ordinances, Chapter 91, requiring microchipping of dogs and cats, read in full.
Item been properly moved by committee members. Councilman Owen is the sponsor of this ordinance. We also have Andy McClinton and Adam Hamilton from Louisville Metro Animal Services. Councilman Owen, you have the floor, sir.
So I'm a co-sponsor with Councilwoman Purvis, but I'll start us off here, I think. I hope you guys received the email I sent earlier today, kind of providing a little bit of context, but I'll provide more here in the committee meeting. The first thing I wanted to let everyone know is that this really came up out of the animal welfare community. This is not something where we up here at council are directing, laws down at our constituents. It bubbled up out of the animal welfare community, and we've been working on this for at least a year, trying to get it right. Now, that doesn't mean we're there. There's more work to do, but we've been working very closely with the gentleman in the audience from LMAS, Director McClinton, and Mr. Hamilton, just to try to make sure that we're not putting so much burden on LMAS. We're trying to relieve LMAS of some of their current burden as opposed to the other way around. And so they've been with us in every step of writing this ordinance. And so I just wanted to make that very clear, that this is not council sitting on high trying to dictate down, that we're trying to improve things. Couple of other things, and I said this in my email today. I really encourage everybody on the committee and really everyone to read all of the whereas clauses, because I do think the whereas clauses explain what we're trying to accomplish here really well in this case. And two of them, and these are the two that I highlighted in the email I sent earlier today, but I'll just read those, for the record here. Whereas jurisdictions that have implemented mandatory microchipping have seen measurable improvements in return-to-owner rates, reductions in shelter intake, and decreased euthanasia rates. And whereas mandating microchipping for dogs within Louisville Metro will support responsible pet ownership, reduce the burden on shelter resources, and promote public safety and animal welfare. So those are two that I think speak to the core of this issue. Our staff at LMAS is having to euthanize significant numbers of particularly dogs, but dogs and cats that are otherwise healthy and adoptable. And that, for many of us, is really, really hard to swallow. But I think it's also an incredible mental and emotional burden on the staff at LMAS. That used to not be the case. I think, we know that COVID broke a lot of things. Our animal population exploded during and after COVID. People, rightfully so, stopped visiting their vets, stopped getting their pets spayed and neutered. Everybody got a COVID dog or cat. And so we are still behind the 8 ball in terms of our animal population because of COVID. And any steps that we can take to help relieve some of that burden, some of that overcrowding, some of the burden that's on our staff, I think we should take. So then I'll just say one more thing, and then I'll turn it over to Councilwoman Purvis. When people have reached out to me to ask me about this, the two of the places that I've kind of highlighted about who should be for this ordinance, one, if you're an animal lover, if you care about animal welfare in this community, you should support this ordinance, one. Two, if it concerns you to have stray dogs and cats running all over our community, creating in some cases a public safety issue for people, then you should support this ordinance because this ordinance will help alleviate both of those issues. And then it seems like there was one other thing I wanted to mention, but instead of doing that, I will turn it over to Councilwoman Purvis for her thoughts.
Thank you, Councilman Owen. This is something that I worked on a few years ago and just couldn't seem to motivate my colleagues to support me on this. I was driven to create such legislation based on a guy that had been viciously attacked while walking one morning in the park by 2 pit bulls that no one could identify the owner. The guy spent about 3 weeks in the hospital. He almost lost his life. I felt it was an unfortunate situation that this happened to him, and fortunately they were able to capture these animals, and I assume that they were eventually euthanized because I don't think the owner came forward. But if these animals had been chipped when animal services captured them, they could have did the little thing to see who they belong to. Maybe those dogs, even though they committed a vicious act, maybe they could have been returned back to the owner and probably been put back, in safety where they couldn't get out and attack another person. And I also speak from a personal experience. My dog got loose, and he was not chipped. And I'm a person that really just cannot visit the animal shelter without bringing home about 8 other dogs. So I didn't go. I sent someone else, and he was there because they didn't know who he was. His name is Potato, and he was one day away from being potato soup. So thank God we got Potato back, but in order for us to get him back, we had to get him chipped. And I didn't mind because I felt like if Potato gets lost again and he gets picked up, they could identify him and see that he belongs to me. And so it's not about dictating to pet owners. It's more or less like securing their love for their pets and knowing that the dogs get out, that they can find their dogs. It is very stressful. I can't imagine what it would be like to be on the shift that euthanize dogs, and there's nothing you can do about it because they're overcrowded. And I can only imagine that even the no-kill shelters are probably overcrowded as well. They probably take on all that they can. But if we had this mechanism in place, I really think it would reduce those numbers of stray dogs and the dogs that are being euthanized. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Purvis. In the queue is Councilman Piagentini, please. Oh, did we want to?
So I had them come to answer any questions. If you guys have, I think it would be helpful maybe if you could just talk about this a little bit since you've been so, involved in the process. That would be helpful if you guys could just give your kind of perspective on it. That would be helpful.
Yeah, if you would come up and get your name and who you're with.
Director of Metro Animal Services. I started this obviously at the tail end because I haven't been here that long. A whole lot of people did a whole lot of work before I got here. So I just want to start with that. But I'm kind of a numbers data guy. And obviously I'm learning because I've been here about 9 months. And the amount of pets that come in there, it is, it's a little overwhelming. I had no idea the numbers. So we're on pace this year to take in about 10,000, which will be the highest would be 8,700, and that was in 2024. So when I looked at it, so our return to owner rate, and this is for dogs, so our return to owner rate over the last 6 years has been about 35%. So with the microchips, if we can get that number, I have to look at it that way. If I can get that 35 to half, then my intake goes down. And when my intake goes down, my staff has more time to get the dogs, cats, get them out of their kennels, to get them out, to give them nourishment, let them out of there. So the fact that I can reduce or increase that return to owner rate, if I could get it up, like last year, it was 27%, and that was the lowest in the last 6 years. And like I said, this year we're doing good, but 6-year average is 35%. So I think the microchipping can make that percentage go way up, and then our intake could get back down to a manageable. So just to give you an idea, in 2020, our intake was 5,524. 2021, 7,000. 2022, 8,100, 2023, 8,400, 8,400, 2024, 8,749, and then if you do the math, I'm not that super great at math, but we're going to be over 10,000. So anything we can do, the difference between a dog being in there for 3 to 4, 5 hours compared to a week to 7 days is huge for us. Every day staff's working to make sure we find homes and make sure we have open kennels. So this is just another tool we'll have. There's some stuff we need to work out for sure, but this would really help us.
We have a few in the queue. Councilman Piagentini.
Director, if you don't mind hanging out just for a second. Sure. Really, one question for you, and then maybe a request or statement/request here. Help me understand, as I reviewed it to the best of my ability, right? It's a lot, and there's sort of amendments throughout it, so I'm trying to understand the totality of it. But from your operational point of view, right, let's just say we adopted this today, right, or whenever it goes into effect. It goes into effect immediately. How will this, from your point of view, operationally change things to see that ultimate reduction? Like, how mechanically do you see this helping you reduce those numbers?
The biggest thing will be the incentive, and I think you have to be a little more incentive-based. Punitive doesn't always work. So I like the incentives of this. So what'll help me is we come in, they register, they get their license, they get their rabies, and then I hope that they take advantage of the lifetime license. For me, as a responsible pet owner, that's ideal because I don't have to do it every year. Now, you have to do your rabies, but I think the $25 for a lifetime license, if you spay and neuter, if you microchip, if you get the rabies, I think that's a great incentive. And then but the way that also helps is I have obviously staff that we have to take care of the license, we have to take care of all that. So if I cut that number down, then I can use staff to actually, they would go more into a role of looking for the owners, because if we have all this microchip information, I'm gonna need people to find them. So and the other part about this that is you'll still have to do a rabies every year. That chip is only as good as the information on it. So by doing this, we're gonna ensure that every year when they get the rabies, that chip information is updated. Because we'll have dogs that come in, we'll scan them, the information's not good. It wasn't updated, it was 2 owners ago. So this gives accountability, and it'll free up staff, but most importantly, if the information's up to date, we can call them and say, come get your dog.
Okay, and then just my general comment, and I think Councilman Owen, who's one of the sponsors here, has already sort of outlined this. I think I like where this is going. My concerns are twofold. Number one, adding mandates to the public. There are already mandates, right? But so with that said, I do think it does seem like, and the other one is cost. So the two things are mandates and cost. It does seem like, right, and I just want to vet this out a little bit more in my head and learn more about what's going on here with my colleagues, that we're attempting to thread that needle. I mean, I see, for example, the trade-off for a lifetime license as being one of those compromises where it's like, we're increasing requirements in microchip, or we're decreasing a requirement to do, 3-year or annual licensing, right? And the cost seems to be relatively neutral if you go about that process. So I like where it's going. We'll probably need a little more information. Would probably just want to hold this, but I know there's other people that want to talk and ask questions, and I appreciate everybody's effort on this. I do think we need to do something, and I appreciate you bringing it forward, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I do have a question about cost. You said you had to update the chip when they come in does that cost to update that chip?
No, sir.
Okay, and then what about foster care? Do the foster parents of these pets, do they pay are they mandated to?
This would just be for ownership, whoever is owning the pet.
So not the foster?
No, sir.
Okay. We have a few more in the queue. Councilwoman Rui, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to tell a couple little stories about dogs and microchips. So one of them was at Rutherford Elementary a couple years ago. We were doing a trash pickup. A little dog wandered up, captured the little dog, got a leash on him, walked her over to the vet. The vet scanned the little dog. Turned out she had come from LMAS, from somebody who was like a serial adopter, and she'd already given the dog away. Long story short, that dog had a forever home within like 6 hours. We were able to identify quickly where the dog belonged. Then 2 weeks ago, I was over at the intersection of Southern Parkway and Newcut Road looking at the traffic light with somebody from DOT, and here comes this pit bull, cute little pit bull, brown dog. Oh, look at you. Oh, you don't have a collar. That was 60 pounds of pit bull. Carried her back to my car, got her to the vet, had a chip in there. Got that dog back to her owner within 15 minutes. If it hadn't been for the chip in there, who knows what we'd have to figure out to do with the dog until we found her owner. So, yeah, they are valuable because you can go to any vet's office, they got a chip reader, and you can get the animal back to their family much faster than having to depend on LMAS to come get them, or you have to haul them over there, whatever. So they are extremely valuable, and I will be supporting this.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Owen?
Yeah, just jumping back in quickly to say a couple things. We recognized on the front end that the mandate issue that Councilman Piagentini, and I've spoken to him about that, is something that we're going to have to work our way through. And the cost issue is something that we're going to have to work our way through, especially the cost burden to people who can't afford it and really don't have access to care. So those are both places that I would love comments and suggestions. We've done, all we can thus far, but anywhere in this that you guys have suggestions on, particularly those two topics, but any other topics in the legislation, we're open to that, and we would really appreciate that. I said in my email that I sent out earlier today that I was hoping to have this conversation today, and then we would table the ordinance after we had the conversation, so we could have 2 more weeks to kind of think about it, talk about it, come to, some better solutions potentially. So I'd like to go there, but I know there are a couple other people in the queue that would like to speak, and so let's let them speak, and then maybe we can see if we want to table it at that point. Thank you.
And we'll carry on the conversation with Councilman Joseph.
Yeah, my only concern really is exactly what Councilman Piagentini said with the mandate, but I do have 2 quick questions if, I don't know which direction to go towards on this. First of all, how would something like this be policed, if that makes sense? And then my second question is there what is the punishment / fine with this? Because I guess where my mind goes with this is the law-abiding citizens are going to obey this, but there's going to be plenty of that are still not, if that makes sense.
I think I can answer it for the
Okay.
most part. So the enforcement of it will be kind of like any other, when we go make a run to someone's home or we get called somewhere, we'll check and see, if they have their license, if they have their rabies, if all that's up to date, if they've been registered. If they're not, then they would be issued a violation, and they'll give an X amount of time to follow whatever they're failing to do. In this situation, it's written in, it will be maybe fined up to $500 per occurrence. And that goes in front of the Code Enforcement Board, and then ultimately that's who would decide if it's up to the 500. But the enforcement will be if we're called there, if there's an issue with their dog or we come in contact with them, then we're going to check and see. And if we see that they're not microchipped, then they would be issued a citation.
Do you have by chance a data point, and I don't expect that you do, but do you by chance have a data point of what is the percentage of dogs that are not microchipped that do make it back home?
I do not have that. Only thing I can give you is that roughly we returned 35% of the animals that we get in to the owner. I'll check and see. I don't know that answer, but I'll see if we can get it.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Herndon, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir. A couple of questions. I have a concern about the cost as well, particularly with folks of limited means, or even with the means to pay the 25, but even to get there if they don't have transportation to get them there. What would the financial burden be on your office if it was offered for free?
That part we could, the money part wouldn't be my concern. I mean, it's a concern, but I think there's enough folks in the room and enough people in this community that I think we can make that part happen. My concern is capacity for my staff, and then how are we going to get folks to and from, how are we going to get, so that would be, the money part I think we can make happen.
Okay. That would obviously, I would think, would increase exponentially the number of people who would bring them in. I think that would help, but I just didn't want
For
to
sure.
overburden you, overrun you financially, but if that's,
I don't think it would. The cost for us is, I mean, it's not crazy. It's just the manpower, the staffing to do it.
Cost for that, obviously.
For
That-
sure.
I guess that's my long-term
And that's
question.
just
If you
the
can't answer that
number.
question now, I would love to know what you think that would mean. If you could predict the increased participation and then therefore the staffing to handle that, what would that cost be, and would that put you in a bad spot financially?
Yeah, the part that would put me in a bad spot is I would have staff, they would be tied up doing that instead of doing spay and neuters and doing treatments for the animals. That would be my biggest cost, and then that affects it a whole lot of different ways. I think you would have to look at, if we could get the other vets to help us, that would be the biggest help for us, is to have the vets. And I don't know how you do it. I mean, there's several ways you can do it, but I think we could discuss it. But cost, it wouldn't, I mean, we can make the cost. We'll figure it out. It's just staffing, manpower, where we're going to do it, who's going to do it, and then, but we could make it happen. We would just need help from
Just food for
vets.
thought, just wanted to
For sure.
mention. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Jenny Mulvey Woolridge, please.
Thank you, and thanks for being here. Thanks for putting thought into this, Councilman and Councilwoman. Councilman Herndon, I think you and I were along the same lines on some of that. I was just thinking, if there was a process in place, if this were passed today, like, and everybody lined up tomorrow to come and do these microchips. I understand there's some places you can go get them, but is there a process in place? Is it going to tie up all of some of your other team members that are already overburdened? Do you have the microchips there? Do you have the licensing in place? All of those questions would be there, and I would want to make sure that was thought out before we put this in order, because I wouldn't want to overburden somebody that's already overburdened. And then I think the question was already asked, if we had the number of animals that we thought might already need this, just to get the idea of how many microchips were needed, whether it be through LMAS or through the vets that would support this. And then what would happen if an owner comes in and says, yeah, I don't want to microchip my animal? I mean, is that an automatic fine for them, or is that too bad we're going to anyways, or has that been thought of?
It would be issued a violation, and then that'll be decided, it'll ultimately be decided by the code enforcement board. If they're going to fine them, if they're going to make them pay.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Shamika Parrish Wright, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I first want to say, in my district, this comes up a lot, and I think this is actually a great move forward, because I do struggle with mandates as they may present a financial burden, but I do trust that LMAS is ready to meet this need. We've passed some legislation before without all the things lined out, and we were able to get in line. I think for the uniformity of it, for the longstanding work that Councilwoman Purvis and others have put towards this, this is a real good step forward. And I think anything would have a learning curve and a rollout that would make sense, so you're not overburdened. And I do understand what it's like I came to just do an infomercial with you all and left with a cat. So I definitely understand that the need is there, and that cat is doing very well.
Good.
But so I think this is good. I think we need to trust the process, let you all figure this out, and then come back to us with updates about how it's going. I agree with my colleagues. Folks don't know the depth of this, right? We know from some of our district work, but this is a huge issue. And as I've traveled across the county, there's different issues in different parts of the county. So I think this is actually a unifying issue for the county, which will help resolve a lot of issues in communication. So thank you for this, and I plan to support it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Piagentini, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have some follow-up questions even from what Councilman Mulvey Woolridge had already asked. But I think Councilman Owen has said it, right? He's comfortable with, let's work through these issues. What I will do, and I'll ask everybody else to do, let's get our emailed questions to the department, to the sponsors. Let's get that sorted out over the next 2 weeks. I will do that as soon as humanly possible, next 24 to 48 hours, so we can work that. But with that said, if it's okay with the committee, I'd like to make a motion to table at this time.
We've had the motion. We have a second? It's been properly moved. We voice vote? Voice vote on tabling. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say nay. The ayes have it. The measure is tabled. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Clerk, please read item number 4 into the record.
An ordinance amending sections 100.01, 100.02, 100.11, and 42.31 of the Louisville Metro Code of Ordinances, LMCO, regarding exceptions to permitting requirements when peacefully demonstrating. Read in full.
Do a motion? Motion. Second. Properly moved and seconded. Councilman Piagentini is the sponsor on this. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just tabled the last one so we could get to my legislation. That was really a selfish, no, I'm just kidding. That's not why. But thanks very much. I appreciate everybody giving me a moment to explain this real quick. This is not actually a real revolutionary change, but it is tweaking the law related to two things, actually. One is what we call parade permits, and the other area is related to permitting or requesting to use public parks, okay? And it's all surrounding the idea of using these licenses or these permits, related to First Amendment protected activity, right? So things that would be, protesting a government policy or, speaking out against things. This is not changing anything related to needing a parade permit or how you use the parks for example, commercial activity or birthday party, right? Those policies will stay in place. So we're making some modifications related to how we issue these for First Amendment protected activity. Why? As background, now, the prior mayoral administration and this mayoral administration, in my humble opinion, have not been consistent with how they have enforced our laws on the books related to this. For example, if you were to and I'll give two specific examples. If you were to protest and want to march down the street to protest tax policy, right, or anything you want to protest, there's a process of which you have to get a parade permit to do so, okay? Recently, we saw some protests that ended up going into the street and using the streets as part of their protest. That is technically currently illegal. They would have to be cited in violation of our parade permit law. To be clear, that does not include what's already legal is if a protest is static, not dynamic, so they're standing there and it spills into the street a little bit, that's okay. That's actually already covered in our law. But once you start marching down the street, you have to get a parade permit to do that, right? There were some protests that didn't, and nobody in that protest was cited. There was an organization right afterwards, and I'm gonna, if I mess up their name, I apologize, but Moms Demand Action Against Gun Violence or something like that, one of those groups, then requested a parade permit to protest against gun violence, and they were denied by the city. Now, they may have been denied for a very good reason. I mean, there might have been a reason the city had some administrative purpose or not for issuing it or not issuing it, but the bottom line is they were denied their right to protest, while other groups who did not attempt to go through the process were able to protest and all of that. So I think that's an inequity. Similarly, related to parks, parks has rules that you have to get certain permits if a group above a certain amount comes together, for example, to protest. And we've seen this not evenly applied to different groups. For example, some groups have come together in parks to protest, again, whatever it is, whatever their topic is that's related to their First Amendment protected rights, not gotten a permit from parks, and they were not cited for doing what they were doing. Meanwhile, I know a while ago there was the Tea Party, that group, wanted to get together in a park. They applied to the city for the permit to do so. The city said, well, you need to get porta potties, you need to get insurance, you need to get all these things. They started layering on costs, and the organization was like, well, we don't have the money for that, and they were denied the ability to do so. Again, I'm looking for, some groups are doing it because they're not following the current rules, right? They're not getting cited, and then other groups are trying to follow the rules, and they're being denied the same ability to protest in these same locations. So the two changes that I've made, one is related to, again, the parade permitting process. We've added an exemption, okay? First of all, we've defined peaceful demonstration. Quote, an event in which people gather together in order to support show support or opposition to something or someone that does not involve violence, threats of violence, or incitement to imminent lawless action. So to be super clear, the administration has been consistent that if any protest, no matter how initially lawful, starts to engage in any of those activities, they shut it down. And that happened. In addition, for example, they did shut down a group that had gone down the street near the federal courthouse because they were blocking traffic, starting to touch cars, and starting to engage in activity that's not covered, right? So we define a peaceful demonstration here, and we add an exemption in the permit required for a parade permit. For example, some of the exemptions are funeral processions. Funeral processions, we don't require them to permit. One of the additional exemptions will be, quote, peaceful demonstrations related to protected First Amendment speech that does not disrupt traffic in a manner and does not disrupt the free flow of emergency vehicles. By the way, for the Assistant County Attorney, was that supposed to be in any manner?
Yes.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
okay. So, for the clerk's office, can that be a technical thing? Any instead of a? Okay. So it's supposed to read peaceful demonstrations related to protected First Amendment speech that does not disrupt traffic in any manner and does not disrupt the free flow of emergency vehicles. I want a hat tip to Aaron, by the way. He called that out. So on the record, I wanted Aaron to know that he was right. So that's an additional exemption. You do not need a permit, and if you fulfill these criteria, you can protest on the street. The other exemption is under the parks permitting process, where it says, quote, a permit, this is what we're adding, right? A permit shall not be required for peaceful demonstrations related to protected First Amendment speech that do not disrupt access by emergency personnel and does not conflict with any other previously approved permitted uses of that same park. Before I go on, to be clear, if somebody has already gotten a permit for a particular area of the park, your protest does not trump that. So they have access, you would be violating their rights, so that's still protected. It goes on, quote, for purposes of this section, a peaceful demonstration is defined as an event in which people gather together in order to show support or opposition to something or someone that does not involve violence, threats of violence, or incitement to imminent lawless action. The administration is aware of these changes. I understand that senior people within the administration have reviewed it. They don't have any objection. I think this aligns with how they are currently enforcing the law. So my intent here is to align the law with how the mayor's office is currently enforcing the law. To be clear, my personal opinion is, I actually, to some degree, wish they were enforcing the current law. I think this adds a bit of uncertainty related to roads and how parks are used that I wish we wouldn't do. But at the same time, if I have an executive branch that is enforcing it in this manner, I want everybody to have the same rights if they want to exercise their First Amendment rights using these public spaces. So that's the background. That's why I've amended it this way, and I would ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. In the queue, we have Councilwoman Donna Purvis, please. Okay, second one in the queue is Shamika Parrish Wright, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I first want to say that yesterday during planning and zoning, I watched Councilman Piagentini do his presentation, the little cursor and everything, and I said, I think that when you do come, you come with, receipts and ready to deal with our issues, face forward, and I do appreciate that you try to put that research into play. My comments are from direct experience, and I wrote some of them out so that I can stay focused on what I see. So I found out about this legislation, of course, through looking through email and looking through upcoming things on our agenda. But mainly, people started texting me immediately and saying that you're trying to mess with protesters. And I always read a book for myself, and I said, well, I haven't seen any legislation around it, because I hadn't at that point. And then when I did, it immediately made me think of the First Amendment. And I think about how many times we've brought legislation before this body to talk about how people were being discriminated against, treated against, ceasefire, all of these things, and people are constantly told us, oh, we don't work on those issues, that's the federal, or we don't work on these. Well, this is something that crosses over to the First Amendment, which guarantees our right, as you said, to assemble, and that freedom is essentially to the health of our democracy. So Louisville Metro government has a responsibility to govern all people equally, as you alluded to some, not to pick and choose whose voices are heard. So all gatherings begin with a peaceful intent. I have been around for 48 years, but a long time of seeing protests and gatherings and parades. I've also gotten permits for our local parks. I've helped groups get permits for parades, for protests, for actions, for all kinds of things. So I've been on all sides. And I've also been a part of protests where we didn't require a permit, and protests that spilled into the streets, but we stayed on one side of the street. We didn't impede traffic or the flow of traffic. So I'm coming from this from a very experienced level on that. So I ask for your grace in that. And I'm going to finish up. So all gatherings begin with a peaceful intent. The fact that people are voicing their opinion does not make them violent. Every event carries a degree of risk because people are unpredictable, as we've seen, especially in recent news. But it's important to recognize that if outside agitators, and sometimes even that's law enforcement, cause disruption, the violence occurred at that event, not because the event was not peaceful. Sometimes when we're doing this work, protest is always seen as violent or disruptive in that way, but protest is a part of the fabric of our country. So restricting the right to assemble by layering, which I think this is doing, layering and unnecessary permit requirements, undermines both the Constitution and community trust. So our Louisville Metro Code of Ordinances already addresses this process in the sections you outline in your legislation, 100, all of those. These safeguards are in place, and they are sufficient because each event is different. That's why people have to apply. You can't blanket all of the events because there are particulars and nuances that prevent you from that. So the proposed changes to the exceptions for permitting peaceful demonstrations are not only not unnecessary, they risk the chilling free speech that I'm worried about, this discouraging civic engagement, and creating inequities in who gets to gather and be heard. Now, it is unfortunate. I worked with Moms Demand Action. I heard your Tea Party example. I don't think anybody should be discriminated against when they're trying. I think they all should be equitable in trying to get their permits. But protecting the right to assemble honors the spirit of the First Amendment, and it is our duty to uphold that right for every resident of Louisville. So I don't see the need to those changes, but I do see the need to offer clarity. I see the definitions you provided. I think that's good because a lot of general people don't understand even how to get a permit. I've had people from congressional offices contact me about getting a permit for our local parks. So there is that general information that needs to go out, but I don't think that this ordinance is necessary because what we have in place already outlines the things that people need because each event is unique. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Would you like to respond?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah, maybe there's a miscommunication here. The examples that you gave, I'm loosening restrictions. I'm not adding, I'm loosening. So feel free to vote against it. Feel free. I don't expect, everybody to vote for everything I'm doing here. But whoever tells you that I'm messing with protesters, I'm making it easier for them not to get cited. You leave the law as it is. You admitted yourself you have participated in protests where you and others should have been cited. Because actually the way the law is written right now, once you start going down the street, once you start moving down the street without the permit, it actually allows everybody to be cited. And this will actually eliminate that and say that those folks, to your point, and I agree with you, as long as there's still some free flow of traffic, emergency vehicles, right, and it's already illegal to do violent acts, right, I'm not changing anything there, that those folks can do that. It would make some of the recent No Kings protests where they randomly, without permits, walked down the street, totally legal. They were not legal. What they did was not legal, but this would actually allow it to be legal. I'm giving people an equal footing, as long as they're meeting these requirements, I'm reducing the burden that they can exercise their First Amendment rights. That is what we're doing here, because some groups are, and I want to be careful, I don't want to say discriminating, because I'm not saying that any mayor was picking and choosing based on some discriminatory matter, but some groups did not get the ability to do it while some did. I want to level that playing field. I'm reducing the burden to exercise your First Amendment rights, not increasing them. I just want to be super clear about that. Again, feel free to vote against it if you want to, but I am reducing the burden, not increasing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Next in queue is Councilman Leninger, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess my question pertains to the examples given just now in the response by the sponsor about the No Kings protests that have happened recently, because and comments made previously about being satisfied with the mayor's enforcement of these ordinances as they are currently written. I do recall there being some concerns raised at the time that there was not enforcement, that you were not, that the members of the body were not satisfied with the enforcement. Then to hear in the response that it's a question of impeding the traffic and that those events did not impede the traffic, I guess I don't know, I kind of felt like the people in the street were kind of impeding traffic. If you are marching down 6th Street from Jefferson to Broadway, by what definition is that not impeding traffic? I guess this is a question in the eye of the beholder that I think is a little bit of a can of worms. So I'm not trying to address directly, but I guess I would be curious to hear the sponsor's response.
Would you like to respond, Councilman?
Yes, please, thank you. So, yeah, a couple things. Yeah, and as I said earlier, I'm very frustrated by the mayor's lack of following what the current law says. He's not enforcing it, what the current law says. And I had multiple conversations with the administration, with LMPD, and they were very clear that the only thing they were going to enforce is if it breached into violence or things like that, right? Or the inability of emergency vehicles to move, right? And that type of thing. That was the genesis of this. If that is how they're going to enforce it, then I think that's what the law should say, right? Because essentially, if we don't do it that way, then they could be restricting some people's ability to protest. And so, yeah, I'm not happy with how the mayor is what I'll call picking and choosing in this case, how and when to enforce the law. We either need to have a law that is consistently enforced, or we need to change the law. And that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to change the law so it's more consistent with how the administration is doing it. And frankly, it gives more. I think it again, as I said earlier, and I don't want to repeat myself too much, reduces that burden for certain groups as long as they continue to do kind of what they're already doing. I do think, I mean, some of those No Kings protests, there was nothing violent about it. I 100% agree. The only law they were violating was the permitting process, right? And so this would eliminate that for them, and that everything they did that day would have been completely legal, even the permitting. So I hope that answers your question. Did I dance around it too much?
Thank you. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, if that's all right. Again, I guess the part that I am struggling to understand where we're at with the proposed amendments center on the impeding of traffic. Because again, the groups went, held the street, walking down the center of the street. So, yeah.
Can I address that?
Yes.
Sorry, yes. So to some degree, you're right. That is currently in every way at the discretion, if you will, of the executive, right? So in the mayor in this case. What we did not get too specific here, because I didn't want to say that, if you can't go down this street, then, I didn't want to make it too prescriptive, actually. The intent here was, as long as you can still get to another place, even if it's through an alternate route, then that protest is still legal, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean like I'm on this street and therefore it's illegal. No, actually, if you can get around it, it's still fine. That's how they're enforcing it currently, and that's the intent behind this. We are not saying here that if you're on this particular street, you're already blocking it, right? Now, if you're covering multiple blocks and it's truly impossible to get to, for example, the Hall of Justice, you got an appointment there and you got to be there and there's no mechanical way to get there, no way to get there in the street, then now you're starting to breach, right? And then emergency vehicles must be allowed to pass, but that's been a standing rule for quite some time. So that's really not a change. So yeah, I did not prescribe here that just because you're on this street, that's blocking everything. No, you have alternate routes to get to that location safely, and people can take those routes. I hope that's clear. But I will say, I mean, I don't want to, like any legislation, I can't legislate everything. There is discretion, as there currently is, with the mayor's office on when they enforce it.
Thank you, Councilman. We've got just a couple minutes left. I'm going to allow Ken Herndon, who hasn't had a chance to speak, he's in the queue, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm equally a little confused because the No Kings March, the first one was 5,000 people. I was one of them. And I said before you guilty. I was in the street. 5,000 people block every lane. So I guess, are you suggesting that that's okay? I mean, it's.
Well, you did it, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
were you cited?
No.
So the mayor said it's okay. So I'm legislating that, yes, as long as there was alternate routes for people to move, right? So in other words, if you were getting to where multiple blocks were blocked and truly nobody could move downtown, right? Or sort of trapping people, that's the other problem, right? Where they have no ability to reroute or anything like that. That's where problems are created. But generally speaking, as they've indicated, right, as long as there were, as they didn't deem in that case that happened, right? So they didn't intervene. So that's why we're writing into the law that there's an exemption. You know, again, you weren't cited. I am making it in the law that you should not be cited.
Okay.
Right? That's really all we're doing.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. One more quick, we got time. We don't.
Thank you. We are running out of time, and if there's any more questions, I would ask that, let's see, Councilwoman Wright and Councilman Lenninger, they're in the queue. If you would please contact the sponsor with questions, I'm sure he'd be glad to answer, but right now we've got to make room for the next committee. I would, not to cut you guys off, but this is an ordinance and it requires a roll call vote.
Mm-hmm.
So if the clerk would open up the roll call, we want to get to this vote, please.
Voting is open.
Councilman Joseph is online. Can you, I know. It's not moving right now. Can you call Councilman Joseph?
Councilman Joseph?
Yes.
Chair Syme, you have 4 yes votes, 2 no votes, and 1 present vote.
The ordinance passes and will be sent to old business, correct, clerk?
Yes.
It will be sent to old business, and there's no other further business. We'll hold a special public safety committee on Wednesday, September 24th at 4 p.m. to honor Law Enforcement Appreciation Month. Thank you for your time, and we are now adjourned.